it's Pam with 44 Marketplace and Creative Finishes by Pam. And today we are going to talk about whitewashing a brick fireplace. I get lots of questions about this, and I am going to go over the way that I do it. I know everybody else does it differently. So I'm just going to kind of go over it quickly, and you can let me know what you think. As you can see, I've already started over on the other side. And when you whitewash, your goal is not to paint the bricks. Your goal is to allow some of the natural beauty of the bricks to show through, while neutralizing some of the colors that maybe are a little too much for the room that they're in. I typically use a large brush. This one is a Trilon Diamond Pro, and this is what I normally use on my bricks. I also have a small brush that I use on the grout sometimes, just for that last minute touch-up. I use Dixie Belle paint, typically because it doesn't need a sealer. So that way you can just paint. Now you can use Dixie Belle's flat clear coat if you want some type of top coat over it, but Dixie Belle's paint doesn't require a top coat, so you don't even have to use that. It is amazing on brick, but there's a few things you have to remember when you're doing brick. I'm gonna spin you guys down a little bit so you can see. All right, there's a few things you have to remember when you're doing brick. Taping and draping, I'll show you how I have done it. Hey, Kimberly. If you look, you can see that I now have a TV over the fireplace, but I also have all of this taped and draped. All of the floor is sealed up, and also when you are painting, you want to make sure that the hearth is covered while you are painting above it, because if you don't have the hearth covered while you're painting above it, you won't even realize that you've got paint dripping and things like that, and before you know it, you're going to have a mess down here. Brick and grout are both very porous, so they actually absorb a lot, and typically, like today we're using fluff as our base coat. And it depends on what you're looking for as to whether or not you want to use an off-white base like drop cloth or buttercream, or whether you want to use fluff. This one, the homeowner wanted a white base, which just makes it a little bit lighter, and that's what we're going for. And what I'll do is, I'm one of those that would rather put less on and have fewer mistakes than to put on a lot and then you've got to take it back off. So if you'll notice on the other side where I've done it, you can see that it's just a little bit lighter because, like I say, we're whitewashing these bricks and we are not trying to paint it. The grout, like I say, is porous, and so are the bricks. So be mindful. Use plenty of water in your mixture. Don't go crazy with it because you'll have drips everywhere. And also be very mindful of where your bristles are flipping. Make sure you cover a wide area. Cover any soft surfaces like the TV I covered because it's electronics and you're using a water-based material and water. You just don't want to get anything on your stuff or anybody else's stuff. So be mindful when you're doing that. And I'm going to go ahead and get started and show you guys how I do it. Hey Amanda, let everybody know. If you don't mind sharing this, that would be great. Okay, so typically I use a tray like this, and I have my mixture already down pat. This is what I'm going to use. It has fluff in it and some water. I also keep my mixture bottle around. If you go too heavy on it, you can always back off some. You can always spray it. I like to wet mine as I get started. My mixture bottle is going to be shy because it's on screen now. Now it's not going to want to spray for diddle squat. All right. So I've got my cover down so that in the case I get any splashes or splooshes, and you want to just rub it in. Now when you first put it up there, it's going to look very, very, very white because it has not absorbed into the stone at all. And like I say, you would much rather have to go back and put another coat on part of it than to have too much on your piece, on your project, and have to try to get that back off. If you notice that you do have too much, I'm going to have to move you guys up. Sorry, you can't even see what I'm doing. Apologies. Okay, so you can see when you first start putting it up, like I say, I'll wet my bricks some. and then I start wiping it on. Now, when you first put it on there, it's going to look very, very white. But as you notice, it'll start absorbing because, again, we have a very porous surface that we're working with. And you can't really tell exactly what it's going to look like until it's soaked in some and dried a little bit. So, until you can kind of get an idea, you want to just kind of let it sit, because you can always reactivate the paint in the next few minutes easily by just spraying a little bit of water from your mister bottle on there. And if you do happen to get too much white on there or too much of your color, you can do that. Now, once I get done with this base coat, I will be going back in and highlighting some of these bricks so that we have some of the tones that we want in there, because this is what I call an organic wash. She doesn't just want the bricks whitewashed. She also wants some of the colors, the other color in the room, to come out. So I will go back in and I will be putting in some more of the colors. I have Gravel Road, I have Coffee Bean, I have Putty, and Dried Sage, which will be put back on here in either a blend or a dry brush method, depending on which one I like the looks of the best. But this is an organic wash, and that way we are going to whitewash these bricks and this scrap, but we're not going to paint them. You don't want them to be white. She wants it to still have somewhat of an organic feel when we're done, just not quite so dark. It's a little dark for her taste for the room. So you can see when you're doing it, some of it is going to take it, because it's a porous surface, some of it is going to take it a lot better than other parts of it. So you'll just have to kind of keep an eye on what you're doing and everything. When you're painting, make sure and don't let your bristles flick, because they can flip paint all over your room if you're not careful. Just barely move your brush back and forth so your bristles stay in contact with the surface that you're working on, because if they start flipping off this surface, ooh, you're going to have paint everywhere. I'm just telling you. You don't want paint everywhere. You just want to brush nice and easily, nice and soft. Don't use your best synthetic furniture painting brushes for this, because this is a very rough surface and it is very tough on your brushes. I'm just going to tell you that. It can mess up your brushes. So I wouldn't use my best furniture painting synthetic brushes. That's why I am using a different set of brushes. That's what I always use on fireplaces. I use something a little bit heavy, more heavy duty. You want to make sure and remember that your grout goes up and down, as it goes vertical as well as horizontal, because sometimes when you're doing it, you get kind of caught up in what you're doing and you'll lose track of the fact that you've got some vertical grout too. And then when you step back and look at it, you're like, holy cow, I don't even have any, that's still dark gray. And now this grout is not very dark. It's kind of a light gray. Some of the fireplaces that I've done have very dark grout, and it takes a couple of coats usually to go over it the way you want it to. But it really just depends on what you're looking to do. It is kind of a slow process, the way I do it. I like to make sure that I get all of it done really well, and after it dries some, I'll go back over places just to make sure I'm getting the coverage that I'm looking for. And it really depends on the kind of finish, because some people just want to paint the bricks. They want them to be totally white or totally gray or something. It's not really a wash they're looking for. Today, what we're doing, we are not painting these bricks. We're just washing them with a mixture of fluff and water. And it's, people ask me what it is. It's probably not half and half. It's more like 3 to 1 water to paint. But I mix some, and then I put a little bit on here, and if I don't like it, then I add more water or more paint, depending on what I'm looking for. And I've done it so much that I really just kind of do it by feel, plus it depends on the finish that I'm going for. Also remember, you don't need to work inside the firebox, the actual firebox, because that takes a lot of heat, whereas the bricks right here on the edge, you can do those with no problem. But if you go inside the firebox, then you're kind of getting into an area that no paint will hold up to it, that's not made to hold up to it. So you've got to be mindful of what your paint can and cannot stand. Also be mindful that everything has to be cleaned up well before you start. You want to make sure that your hearth is vacuumed off, that you get away any dust and everything, but especially these bricks that are as close to the firebox. You want to clean those up good, and I'll tell you, the greatest thing to do that with is a nice wire brush and Dixie Belle's White Lightning. It does amazingly well on those bricks. It cleans them right up, and yes, you guys know I don't rinse it off, but if you are so inclined, you can rinse it right away and let your bricks dry a little bit before you start painting. I did not. I just cleaned mine up and started painting. I did those this morning. I did the cleaning this morning. So you can see it is not a super quick process. I have been taping and draping and working on this fireplace pretty much most of the day. And I hope to get my base coat done by the end of the day. And then I will come in and check tomorrow to see where we are on it. And I will do any more white that I need. And I'll start adding my organic elements. Also be mindful when you're doing this that you don't let any runs get away from you, because a lot of times that'll happen. The runs will just, you know, they'll kind of sneak away from you and you won't realize it. And they can drip on something else, or they can drip on your hearth or inside your firebox, and it kind of just leaves it a messy look. But you just want to make sure where those bristles are, where your drips are going. Taping and draping fixes all that. If you tape all of your edges and you drape your rugs and your carpets and your floors and stuff like that, then you really don't have to worry about being quite so careful. You still want to be careful, but the more you tape and drape, the less careful you really have to worry about. All right, well, that's what we have done today. We are doing our fireplace. We're whitewashing it. Like I say, I still have quite a bit left to go, and I've got part of the hearth left to go. I'll show you. We'll uncover this a little bit so you guys can see what I've done on that. Let's see. All right, so you guys can see part of the hearth is done and part is not. So that way, if you guys are looking, you can see we are just going for a softer look. And I will put up pictures as we finish. Thanks so much for tuning in today, and you guys have a great afternoon.